It's hard to believe we're at 3 million serial numbers. It just feels like yesterday we hit our first million, and then we had, a very nice project going on with the 2 millionth guitar, and now we're at 3 million.
As a 192-year-old company, Martin has celebrated many milestones, and it's a journey. If you think about 2 years ago, we celebrated 2.5 million, and here we are 2 years later, and we're talking about 3 million.
Along my journey, I decided it would be appropriate as we came to particular milestones in our serial number history that we should celebrate. Starting over there, working our way around, the 2 millionth guitar from which we made the D-200, that was pretty cool that we were able to make a milestone and then make something similar in style that we could then offer to our customers. 2.5 millionth guitar, we made 2.5 million in one, because I actually like to travel with these, but they're like museum artifacts. And other than going to a trade show, they pretty much live either here in the museum or in our archive collection. And so that's why we made 2 of these. Same thing's gonna happen for the 3 millionth guitar. And here we are. Now, full disclosure, I gave this some thought last night. We have actually built already more than 3 million fretted instruments. If you count the number of mandolins that we made 100 years ago, which had their own separate serial number sequence, and of course, Martin ukuleles that we've been making for over 100 years that we didn't put serial numbers on. So maybe we are definitely beyond 3 million, but this is really to celebrate the guitar, the Martin guitar, and of course, why not make it a dreadnought?
The genesis of the 3 millionth guitar is about a year and a half ago. I took a trip to Pearlworks. They've been a partner of ours in many of these milestone instruments. We started talking about, hey, our 3 millionth guitar, I know it feels like it's far away, but it's gonna take a while. And we talked through some of the ideas, some of the concepts, and basically hitting 3 million, we're thinking, okay, the power of 3, what does that mean? And what we settled on was past, present, and future. Similar to the 2 millionth guitar, which represented the passing of time between, the 1 millionth guitar and the 2 millionth, and we celebrated that with a watch timepiece design. This one, we wanted to talk about the and company part of Martin and Company.
Think about other guitar brands that you're familiar with, right? Particularly American guitars. Very often, right up here is the name of the founder of the company. Very often. Now, in some cases, the founders are deceased. In some cases, some companies have been bought and sold several times. But they understand the value, the importance of saying this is a whatever, even though that individual may not be with us anymore. In the case of my family, and I'm so proud of this, that we acknowledged so very early on that Martin guitars are not made just by Mr. Martin. Martin guitars are made by a team of the most highly skilled guitar builders on earth. And so that's why we say C.F. Martin and Company.
So this ampersand as part of that and company kind of struck me. And I almost saw it as sort of a fingerprint or, it could be fingerprints. How important are they? No, we can't list the name of every employee and every worker that ever worked in the factory, but a fingerprint could be symbolic of the people who have left their mark. Again, past, present, and future. So maybe a fingerprint pattern. Somebody came up with an alternative version to the fingerprint idea, but representing the tree itself. Like the fingerprint, tree rings are so individualistic with every tree. And what I have to say, what I love about projects like this is this collaborative effort. You know, we have a great team of designers here and a great team of people that we can resource for all of the inlay work. And so this design process became this collaborative effort. What about this? This works. How about this? And so tree rings were kind of decided upon. And then like, well, since the company's 192 years old, let's have 192 tree rings represented. And then we can start plotting little markers on these tree rings on significant events in the company's history.
If you go back to the beginning of this mythical tree, 191 years ago, the sapling was planted in New York City on November 6th, 1833. And then in 1839, somewhere in here, right, we moved to Pennsylvania.
We started looking at what would represent the move from the 2.5 millionth, because on the 2.5 millionth, we celebrated the Martin family arriving in New York City. And we did a star map in diamonds, which was really cool. How could we up the game a little bit and also tell the next part of the story? Well, the next part of the story is the Martin family moved from New York City to Nazareth, Pennsylvania.
We're good at woodworking, always been good at it. We dabble in inlay. One of the partners that we knew would help is Pearlworks. And we knew they could help because they do pearl inlay for guitars for a living. That's what their business is. And so rather than us, try and figure out, oh my God, how can we even do this in-house? How do they do it? Yeah, right? I think, they're as focused on making sure the inlay work that they do for us and other guitar builders is of the quality of the instrument itself.
Pearlworks has been around for over 30 years now. It was founded by a man called Larry Seifel, and he developed a good relationship with Martin Guitar. He passed away in 2006, but we have been trying to keep his legacy going, and the relationship with Martin has been ongoing and improving ever since.
We certainly have members on our team that have worked on the D-100, the D-200. They have a great appreciation, decades of intimate experience working with Martin guitars, clearly our flagship account. And those relationships, many of my employees as long as perhaps 2 decades have been with us and working closely with folks at Martin. So there's a natural bond between those folks. There's a trust factor that comes into play whenever you're doing something so ambitious. But I also think this project was especially well served because in addition to all that veteran talent that we have at Pearlworks, we've been bringing in a number of newcomers in the past year or two, and they jumped right into the process and they contributed in significant ways. And I think that was really healthy, that mix of young and old in there. But it goes back decades and we're grateful for it.
When we get a project to work on, we are a team here at Pearlworks, so we start with meeting as a group and we try to come up with ideas and we start with an actual drawing, hand drawing of what we're planning to do. And once we get all of that approved, then we go through the CAD process where we put the drawings into the computer, and the computer programs the parts that we're going to cut on CNC machines, and some of the parts are cut by hand. And then they come back to the inlay room where we have to very carefully inlay the parts into the pocket.
My role here, I am an illustrator largely, and it was my job to translate all of the team's ideas into something that we can inlay. Very much a pencil to paper kind of technique. And that's where it starts. This is the culmination of all of our collaborations. We've done many complex projects before this project takes it to the next level. Knowing the importance of the 3 millionth, we've taken design elements from previous projects that maybe were a little less complex or simple, and we've turned it up to 11. You know, I am a huge fan of the D50. Everything is mop outlined. And when we started discussing concepts for this guitar, I said everything needs to be mop outlined, but not like the D50, we need to take it up a notch. So really it's just a matter of using all those years of experience and making it into something more, innovating the concepts that we've grown and built upon.
So the process of translating the designs that Mark drew, we basically have to scan them in to a scanner and then raster them into Mastercam. And then we have a digital image of that, which we generally need to trace and refine to make it perfect. Make sure our tools can cut the paths, because you can't cut a square with a round tool, you know? So we gotta make sure all the fillets are there, make sure everything's cohesive and fits. That's pretty much the start. We trace everything and then we confirm the design with Mark Guitar and get everything rolling.
My role was, one, getting the wood available, getting the wood ready to be sent down here. Sycamore's obvious. The Martin factory is at 510 Sycamore Street in Nazareth, PA. So we chose to use sycamore for the wood. And of course we used Brazilian rosewood for the back and sides because it is the mountaintop of woods to use. It is the best of the best, and that's what we chose, our highest grade material with the nicest color and dark grain lines. And tonally speaking, Brazilian rosewood has this bass response that no other wood has. I also purchased all the metals being used and the equipment to cut the metals. We faced lots of challenges during the sourcing process. One was the material is gold, and a variety of golds. I did not know there were so many golds. I did not know there were so many different levels based in golds and emeralds and diamonds. So yes, getting that material for a guy who spent the last 30 plus years dealing with wood to go, oh, by the way, now find metal for us, that was a little difficult. Thankfully, we had our jeweler, Chris. She took me by the hand and just told me, informed me what I was doing, told me, taught me all the ins and outs of how to buy precious gems. So, when I retire from Martin Guitar, I may become a precious gems dealer just, as a side gig.
My role was as a jewelry designers to provide and consult regarding gemstones, stone setting, engraving, hand engraving, all that kind of background.
You've seen now at this point, there's a lot of CNC, a lot of computer work. But no matter what, when you're making instruments, at the end of the day, it comes down to hands. It comes down to the people doing the actual work. And I feel that with a project like this, we had to do a lot of computer work to get to that point. But once we did, then it's down to the people in the chair, pulling the wires, stretching it out, shaping it. And while that was certainly a challenge with this 3 millionth project, I also felt like outside of the challenge, that was one of my joys. I've never seen anything quite like this guitar. We've all at this point seen a lot of different instruments, and realistically, you kind of get a little jaded about it. You've seen that and done that before, but when it comes to the wires stretched out on these contours of these tops, you end up with a different presentation than literally any other guitar that I've seen before. While I take a lot of pride in a lot of other elements of it as well, the fact that we had to take so many individual pieces of wire that are so fragile you could tie them into a bow if you wanted to, and put them into a contour, glue them down, and then surface them in such a way that it smooths it all out and almost makes it look not just like a tree ring, but it almost has like a sunset or a heat mirage vibe to it as the light catches it that you don't really see in any other instrument that we produced before.
top.
Oh, man.
This is probably as close to complete as you'll see it. Again, we're waiting just the
Wow.
gold for the rosette. The diamond pockets are in place.
Yeah.
This is 192 painstakingly inlaid gold lines.
Oh, my goodness.
Notice how much it weighs.
Yeah, it's got some heft to
It
it.
really does have. The first time I
Yeah.
picked it up, I had done till about here.
Yeah.
And I picked it up off the table to put it back in the bag, and I went, whoa,
Yeah.
that is not
Yeah.
light.
Yeah, it reminds me of a top that would be like a nice sinker mahogany. You know, has kind of that feel
It's
to
got a
it.
dense,
Yeah.
dense nature about it. Yeah.
That is spectacular.
I think it exceeded our expectations. And
I mean, I mean, honestly, the renderings were mind blowing, but to see it in person is just.
yeah, even the test, I think this far went out beyond any test. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
The fingerprint of a tree is actually when you cut a tree, you can see its rings, and there's many different growth rings and bark lines. And what's interesting is with bark lines, it's just a real thin strip of in a real tree, it just has a little dark mark. We actually represented that with this guitar with a solid gold line for each bark line. And each growth ring has a slightly different appearance and color. And in our research, we found out that growth rings can darken during more challenging times for the tree. So for instance, the company, let's say, started down here in 1833. Well, you start getting out to this darker growth ring section, and that's about the time of the Civil War in the United States. And as you come up through, as you can see, there's a little bit of lighter lines. Certain Martin milestones are marked with these beautiful diamond settings, and this goes up around as a timeline. On this particular guitar, we started thinking again about using a palladium for the pickguard, and there is a 14 karat gold inlay that goes around as a border, and then we have individual leaves that are three-dimensional that are also inlaid into the palladium that are solid gold.
The pickguard on this project was, there's a lot of similarities between the 2.5 pickguard and this pickguard on the 3 millionth. The one thing I did change up was I did offer kind of a sculpted inlay as opposed to just flat. So the leaves on this pickguard have a three-dimensional quality to them to add a little bit more interest.
Here on the pickguard, you can see a map of Nazareth, and this is an old-timey map, so this goes back to the time frame where the Martin family would have moved to Nazareth, Pennsylvania. We have 3 locations marked out in rubies. First location is Cherry Hill, which is about 1/10 of a mile from here. And then the second location is North Street, and that one is in town. And in 1964, where we're at right now is 510 Sycamore Street.
My ancestors were not Moravian, and so they were not allowed to live in Nazareth because Nazareth was founded by Moravians and back then was what was called a closed community. If you were not born and bred Moravian, you couldn't live in Nazareth. You could do business in Nazareth, you could come and visit friends, but come sundown, you had to go somewhere else. And so that's why they bought the property right up on the top of the hill across the street, known as the Cherry Hill property. So that's somewhere in here. And then in 1858, the town of Nazareth incorporated itself and let in the outsiders. And by then, my family had become Moravians because it was kind of the only religion in town. So that's somewhere up in here, right? 1859 is when we moved from Cherry Hill to the location on North and Main Street. My family's ancestral home is still there, and of course, the structure that was built over a period of time that we call the old factory that we used until 1964 when we moved out here. The old factory started small, and then as the business grew, they added on. I think it was 1924, I'm not sure where that is in here, but I believe 1924 was the year that we put the last edition the addition in the back, the concrete block addition on that factory, to accommodate the ukulele boom that had really started thanks to the Pan-Pacific Exposition in 1915 and was really roaring during the roaring 1920s. And then the Great Depression. Tough times for us, tough times for our dealers. So hopefully that's just a little line in here in 1929. World War II was a difficult time just because it was a difficult time for Western civilization. You know, we were fighting for democracy versus fascism, supporting our allies in Europe, Great Britain in particular. Difficult time. Coming out of the other side of that, I'm not sure where the 1950s are, but I would like to know, I have to check the cheat sheet, where is 1955? Because that's a particularly important date for me, but significant also because my father joins the business the year I was born and catches the folk boom, right? Rides it all the way through the 50s, into the early 60s. Thank you, Kingston Trio. And then, like I said, 1964, we built the new factory. It was much smaller back then. And folk music and rock and roll collide, and off to the races we go. Once again, all the way through the 60s, through most of the 70s. And it happens, right? People's interest in particular types of music change. And so we've found ourselves by the end of the 1970s, I'm not sure where that is, early 1980s, as we're coming up to our 150th anniversary in 1983, business was very, very challenging. For whatever reason, people didn't want to listen to acoustic guitar music. They wanted to listen to disco. We have a disco ball over there just to commemorate that. Or they wanted to play, if they were a musician and they were competent on the keyboard, they could get something like a Yamaha DX7, which was an instrument that could sound like a lot of other instruments. It was a very difficult time for the company. We had some acquisitions that weren't working. My dad retires, moves to Florida. My grandfather reasserts himself. I'm back from college. I decide to come back and join the business, and it was tough. Times were tough. And then my grandfather died. That was a very emotional time, not just for me and my family, but for our coworkers, for the community, because my grandfather was so involved in the community throughout his career. On the board of St. Luke's Hospital, helps to create the Nazareth Library, helps the Nazareth YMCA to get up and going. And I get to become the boss.
The back of this guitar has the sycamore tree. And as you can see, it has a few things going on with it. One of them being there are little tiny gold leaves, and each one of those leaves has a human fingerprint. And that is to represent the humans that have been working here at Martin Guitar since its inception until now, and our coworkers in the future.
If you think about the long history of the company and where the company is today, there's one most important ingredient that made it all happen and continues to make it happen, and that is people. The people at Martin, our partners. We work with many partners, and they're an important part of who we are, what we do, community. But I think it's beautiful that we were able to pay tribute to all the co-workers, all the people that have been part of the Martin world through this sycamore tree and the leaves, you know, that really symbolize that many, many people make up what Martin has been and what Martin continues to be. And I'm very proud to see this on the back of this guitar.
Part of this project was inlaying leaves, very intricate leaves because they had fingerprint details on them. Obviously, fingerprint, there's a lot of detail on them. So when we were discussing that early on, Tim and I had a discussion about how we were going to do this, whether we were going to use end mill, we were going to mill that, or use some other technology that potentially could give us better results. Led down a discussion. Tim had been looking at some laser technology that will allow us to do really fine lines, really intricate designs, and also have it really be dark and pronounced, which is what we were looking for with these leaves.
We were really challenged on how are we going to get in these fine fingerprint, these human fingerprints on the leaves. Now, you got to understand, these are gold, solid gold pieces. And the only technology available would be hand engraving with our jeweler, which is not a very deep hand engraving, and also machine engraving through our ProWorks partner. Both of those would leave a very shallow engraving, and they would also not be colored that well because you get metal on metal with the engraving. Yeah, you can add a little bit of coloring to it to help pop it, but the challenge on the sides in particular were, how do we get a gold leaf this large to bend as we bend the sides, and then also as we sand things down to retain this engraving. And so after a few thoughts and suggestions, we ended up with a laser. That is a new style for us. It's a fiber laser, and it's also capable of doing a few other things, which is really cool. Like on the label on the inside of the guitar, that is a titanium. It's a grade 5 titanium label, and it's entirely done on our new laser. And when you look very closely at it, you can see these brilliant colors. And you think to yourself, well, how did they do that? Well, it all depends on the heat of the laser. So different heat settings will color the titanium different shades of blue or gold or red, green. And we took advantage of that to create the label. In the past, we used a different technology to create labels, but I think this really works to our benefit.
So the challenges we encountered for the most part with precision and detail is there's 300 parts in the back alone, and every single one of them butt up against each other. So finding ways to make that work without having a catastrophic disaster of, making a big puzzle piece inlay can be pretty challenging. So one way to counter that is to make groups of materials and have separate pockets. And sometimes we glue stuff on the table so that we don't lose position. A lot of those things kind of help keep it moving and make sure that it's centered and we don't lose placement and the inlay is cohesive and intact from start to finish.
We all like the Moravian star that we've used. This was a Moravian community back in the day. These happen to be gold inlays with diamonds that were set. The head plate also is very special. There are tiny, tiny little diamonds all set, and it's also three-dimensional. And the tiny stars that you see are also solid gold with a setting of a diamond.
The stones do kind of come up and move away from the surface with a split prong style setting, which I think adds some interest and is a little bit different than other guitars that I've done.
For the first time ever, we're using liquid metal string post. And so we know the benefits of liquid metal bridge pins, but now with the liquid metal string post, we're gaining a little bit more optimization of the string oscillation, and it allows the string to resonate even longer. So we got the string post and liquid metal bushings, and the tuning gears themselves have these very special solid gold tuning gear knobs, and these were also designed by Chris Francisi. These represent a Moravian star on one side, and the other side represents the sycamore leaves.
So the process for creating the tuning knobs, they start with a master model. So Martin Guitar provided me with some blank tuning knobs, and through the process of hand engraving and sculpting, I made the masters, so to speak, of the tuning knobs. From that point on, we use a process called lost wax casting. So from these master models, you make several molds from them. Those molds are filled with wax. At that point, they go through the lost wax casting process and are either cast in gold or brass.
Speaking of more design in gold for the sycamore tree, we have this sycamore branch design that breaks out from the end piece of the guitar and goes all the way up to the area by the neck. And then of course that is also transferred into the neck and fingerboard area. These leaves you see that do have the human fingerprints are solid gold as well. There's rose gold and yellow gold to help represent the different colors of leaves during the fall time.
Working with Pearlworks and that group of people who were so creative and willing to hear ideas and then share their ideas. You know, they suggested maybe we could do some sycamore tree branches because there was a sycamore tree designed specifically for the back of the guitar. So let's carry that up through the fretboard, through the fingerboard. And they started out with a little sketch, which was very inspiring. Like, we can carry over this fingerprint idea into the leaves. We could put the fingerprints in the leaves, and all of these leaves and the sycamore tree could represent the workers. And I thought, this is really cool. They're taking it to a really creative and inspiring ideal of what this fingerboard should look like. And I quickly doodled something on a fingerboard, on paper, and said, what if we did something like this? Instead of confining all the branches to the center of the fingerboard, we could have them kind of spin in and out. And that sparked some more creative efforts on their part, and suddenly people are thinking about what type of materials to use and how we can incorporate these leaves with fingerprints. And it was beyond my understanding, but I'd like to think that maybe my little creative drawing and a thought about fingerprints helped shape this guitar and make it become really what you see today.
Again, very stunning, just a beautiful, beautiful piece of art. One other thing I wanted to point out, typically we do something around the outside of the guitar, around the rim, that is more intricate and a little more challenging. I think the team really challenged themselves this time, especially at Pearlworks, not only with the overall design and the execution of it, but this particular piece has a hex X design. And we did that because last year we came out with the Inception model. And the Inception has a skeletonized bracing system with this particular design. And so what a fitting little tribute to incorporate into a guitar that represents, past, present, and future, and innovation.
I will say that I've never seen anything like what we've done with the wire for the top, and I've never seen any purfling like that before. You know, most of the time it'll be just a pearl binding with some black, white, black plastic or wood around that, or herringbone is usually the upper version of the purfling that we produced. But this 300 3 millionth with the hexagons and the triangles, which again is when you see that each one of those triangles has to be inlaid by hand and they're flea sized. The end presentation is absolutely gorgeous. What really made this one special to me is that we started from square one. We started from a blank piece of paper, working with Tim, working with Scott, working with Robert, and we went through many different edits, and so that's what made this one in particular different and special. With the D-100, we had to translate Larry Robinson's work into a production setting. With the D-200, we had to make a guitar that mimicked a watch and had all the inner workings visible, and then we had to turn that into a production model. But both of those were baked ideas before they got to us. And in this case, it was not at all. We literally started from the ground up, and here we are a year later. And I'm very pleased with the product, but I'm more pleased with the collaboration, if I'm being honest. I feel like we've all grown a lot closer, understood each other's processes a little more, and just strengthened a relationship that I already felt was very solid.
I hope people recognize the absolute labor of love that this project was in trying to innovate and trying to take these concepts that we've done previously. We've made them in such a way that we're trying to push boundaries. The top alone has thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gold wire in it. And where we had previously worked with gold and metals and that kind of thing, John Mayer Platinum and the D-200, this is next level. This is cranking it up to 11. It took 10.5 hours to physically inlay all of those gold wire by hand, each piece being measured and cut precisely. And boy, what a labor of love that was. So I just hope people recognize and realize just the special nature of this project.
Mark and I are kind of like, people joke around here that we're like husband and wife. We get along, but we argue about everything. But at the end, we're a cohesive team. We work well together, and we respect each other. And when we challenge each other in that regard, we bring out the best in ourselves. And it yields the best results. So while it might be annoying at the time, like that's a process that we evolve into to help create what we create.
My favorite part of this project has been our ability to work so closely with the team from Martin. It's been a learning experience for everybody here at Pearlworks. We've learned about ourselves as individuals and as a team.
I came to Pearlworks as an absolute outsider. There was a leadership transition. I was friends with the founder. I confessed to everybody the day I showed up, I know nothing about inlay, I know nothing about guitars, I know nothing about shell, I know very little about wood. I know about people, I know how to cultivate trust, I know how to keep my word, and I know how to encourage people. Folks who work around me feel safe. Therefore, they're willing to take chances. They know they won't pay a price for having taken a chance and failed. I ask for effort. Effort is what you give. Talent is what you have. I'm much more interested in what you give. This project has convinced my team that everything I had been saying about them for the past decade was within them, within their reach. And Tim and others will tell you, this was somewhat of a surprise for me to come and see this guitar because I haven't been in any one of the meetings that have taken place over the last year and a half. I didn't know any other clear way to show my confidence in my team by otherwise staying out of the room for the most important project we'll ever take on, for the most important client we have. I just absolutely hoped that would convey not only to my team, but to the Martin team. This group does not need me to survive. And at some point in time, I'm going to transition out of Pearlworks, and we're going to have a younger group beneath me and a succession plan that is going to carry this forward for a long time to come. I've become kind of a caretaker, but a project like this has done wonders to convince my team that they've had it within them all along.
Oh, Lord. Look at this shine to be whacking for me the diamonds.
That's amazing.
And the sides look fantastic. Oh, the sides look so good. Yeah, Mark's gonna cry.
There's rubies, bro.
Dude. We'll come back here, dude. Dude.
You were speaking about
Look at the purfling. Oh my God, look at the purfling.
Holy cow.
The purfling looks so good. Wow.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Wow.
Pave on the headstock, great.
Oh, the blood sweat. Oh my God.
These diamonds really add something.
Yeah, you hit that, you hit them right. Oh my God.
Yeah, the bridge is insane. The bridge.
So much to
Oh yeah.
It's
That Operax looks amazing.
more than I could have ever imagined.
It's crazy. like seeing all the parts separate, and then just seeing it all put together. So much to take in. We know what's in there, but it's just incredible when it's all put together like that.
And when you sanded it,
Do you see the engraving on the back?
stable.
It's unbelievable. 192 gold rings put in by hand one at a time, and they finished it. I really want to see the bottom. The size, but I do not.
I just think it's incredible.
I mean, you always have some kind of expectation of what you're going to see, but this blows me away. I mean, the finish, fit, it's gorgeous. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
Let's hope not.
And the cool part is, like a lot of the things that we do, we never get to see the final result. You know, you make all the parts and they look pretty when they go out, but to see something like this fully assembled, that's pretty special. That's pretty special.
So this particular guitar is serial number 3 million. So you can visit this in the Martin Museum. It will always be here. We are creating 2 more just like it. Serial number 3,000,001 will be traveling with Chris Martin as he does his normal rounds throughout the country and the world, doing special events. So that'll be cool if you get a chance. You know, that's an easy way to check it out when he's in your area. And then the third one, which would be 3,000,002, will be for sale. And some lucky customer out there will have the opportunity to own a piece of Martin history. As with the millionth guitar, we did the D-100. For the 2 millionth guitar, we had a variant of that called the D-200. Now with this 3 millionth guitar, we will also have a scaled down version for sale at a limited edition of 30 units. And this is the D-300. So as you can see, its design is very similar with a few exceptions. And so let's talk about some of those exceptions. The markers on the top, instead of being diamonds, they're little solid gold discs. So they are less in your way as you play the guitar. You also have an inlaid pickguard out of ebony. It shows the same map as you would see on the 3 millionth guitar, also with rubies inlaid. We also kept the same design in the fingerboard, but we used less gold. So there's 2 gold leaves here in the 12th fret, as opposed to many gold leaves in the 3 millionth guitar itself. The design on the rear of the guitar, the end piece, and also up by the neck has been scaled down just a little bit, and we're using a beautiful shell instead of solid gold for that. And then on the back, we have the same beautiful motif as we do on the 3 millionth. The leaves are in a beautiful gold shell, and the stars are just a very vibrant, beautiful shell and fine silver, especially the little guy up here. So everything came together really well on this. The head plate too has the same similar look. The inlay is actually white mother of pearl with a fine silver with a solid gold outline. So very striking. We have the same design on the tuning gear knobs. These happen to be brass instead of solid gold, and that is to keep the cost down. So again, a beautiful, beautiful, cherished piece. And, you know, 29 lucky people will be able to buy these. Why did I say 29 instead of 30? Well, this is serial number 3,000,003, and this also will be part of the Martin Museum collection.
What a masterpiece, right? What's that old saying? They don't make them like they used to. In some cases, we make them better than we used to. And I mean that with all respect. You know, but with some of the modern technology, the modern woodworking equipment we have today, we can make a very consistent, high quality Martin guitar. And this one's just over the top, really. So I want to give a shout out to everyone who worked on this and say thank you so much.
So these two are very special guitars, as you know. We always try to do something very special for these presentation serial numbers. It started with 500,000 back in the day, which was simply the employees signing their names on the top. This, however, takes it to a whole new level. And the storyline behind it is this is a celebration of the and Company part of Martin and Company. What does that mean? It means all of you. So this is a celebration of the power of three, past, present, and future Martin employees. And you'll see on some of the gold, we have these human fingerprints on the leaves. And that, again, represents all of you. So very few opportunities we have here to get the folks who actually worked on this project. You all had a part of it. This is what it takes. It takes a village to get something like this done. It's a year and a half from its inception to its completion. And I'm very proud of everybody in here. So thank you for your hard work, your dedication.
When you think about 192 years of history and how many milestones the company has celebrated over that time span. And what I thought was fascinating is we celebrated another milestone 2 years ago with the 2.5 millionth guitar. And 2 years later, here we are with a 3 millionth guitar. So I think it just means for a 192-year-old company, we have tremendous momentum. And the other thing that, to me, this clearly shows is we are the best, right? We here at Martin, with our partners, we work together. And as Tim said, it does take a village. And if you look around, we have members from different parts of the company represented. We work together, and how cool is that? So a big thank you to all of you. That's the result of all your efforts. So a big thank you, and how wonderful to celebrate this together. Thank you.
Like going off that with, the family business and the lineage, if you could hop in a time machine and bring C.F. Martin
I know,
back here today,
right?
what
Yeah.
do you think he would think? Not only of just
No, I know.
these, but
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, when I'm given a tour, and I'll tee it up when I'm on the mezzanine. So, if you're not getting the behind the scenes tour, get you onto the mezzanine, and we're looking at the machine room, where we're making parts, basically, and we have some pretty sophisticated equipment in the machine room today, and it works. The parts are as accurate. They're as accurate as they've ever been, in quantities that my ancestors, their heads would spin, right? Their heads would spin. The entire 5 generations of my family didn't make, what is this one? Which one is this? 700,000. So 5 generations of Martins didn't make 700,000 guitars. And during my generation, we've gone from 700,000 to 3 million. Where do they all go? I'm assuming some of you have more than one guitar, maybe more than one Martin guitar. That's a good thing. I think if they could come back, I would have to maybe spend some time with them before I showed them the factory, just to say it's going to be different. It's going to be different than what you did. Now, what you did was fantastic. And when I think about the quality of the product through all of the generations who didn't have access to the kind of sophisticated woodworking machinery, the climate control that we have, the quality control that we have in place today, I give them all the credit in the world for creating a foundation upon which me, the current C.F. Martin, and all of my friends, the end company, that gives us the opportunity to do projects like this.